Edith Harbaugh is CEO and co-founder of LaunchDarkly, the leading feature management platform. LaunchDarkly serves 2,000 plus global customers like IBM, Atlassian, and Intuit. She has more than 15 years of experience in engineering, product, and marketing with both consumer and enterprise startups, including TripIt and Concur. She is co-host of To Be Continuous, a podcast on software trends, and she holds 2 patents in deployment.
Welcome, Edith Harbaugh from LaunchDarkly, to our next episode of Speak Bold. We're so excited to have you here today. Tell our viewers and our audience more about, in layman's terms, what LaunchDarkly is and a little bit about you.
Thanks, Tammy, for having me today. It's great to catch up with you. So I'm CEO, co-founder of LaunchDarkly. My co-founder and I, John Kodomo, started in 2014, trying to solve a problem that we'd encountered over and over again as engineers and product managers, which was big companies had platforms where they could roll features out to different users. Facebook has a system called Gatekeeper, Dropbox has Gandalf, where you can say, for example, turn it on for San Francisco but not San Jose, see how a feature does, and then do also long-term controls. For example, if you want to have different features in California versus Nevada. So we wanted to build a platform like that every company could use. So I'm really thrilled now that we have 2,000 customers worldwide. We have tech companies like Atlassian and IBM. We have banks. We have transportation companies. We have airlines. We have basically any kind of company you can think of uses LaunchDarkly.
That's amazing. So just in layman's terms, or just feature requests, like just rolling out feature requests in a segmented user base over time.
You could think of it as like lighting up different features for different people, and then also having a dimmer switch. So for example, if you wanted to have different lighting for people again, we're sitting in downtown SF, so I keep thinking of that. If you want to have a different lighting effect for people in SF versus San Jose, we would allow you to control that.
That's amazing. And this prevents people, like if there's happens to be a bug in a new rollout, you'll be able to kind of see that a little more quicker and quietly.
It really gives our customers a great amount of confidence. Because the old way to build software was you would build a release for about 6 months and then ship it out to everybody all at the same time. And I used to do those releases, and they were nerve-wracking. I call them the push and pray release.
Push and pray release. Yeah. Because what could go wrong?
Everything. Like, it could crash. It could bring down a system. It could have a catastrophic error. So then releases would get more and more nerve-wracking because you would try to make sure it's just right. With LaunchDarkly, what you could do is you can push out a release knowing that if something is going wrong, you can turn it off instantly. And that gives our customers, they call it a lot less fear, which then means that you actually end up releasing a lot more. Because you're kind of taking the risk reward for any release in a different direction. You're like, okay, I can try this, I can see if it works. And it really speeds up development then. So I used to be a product manager, and there was just so much fighting. Like, were people going to like this? Is it going to work? Is it going to scale? And then you sometimes default to the hippo, the highest paid person in the room's opinion. As opposed to with dark launching and LaunchDarkly, you could say, okay, let's try this. If it fails, we'll just turn it off. So there's still definitely a role for product management in it. You still have to think of good ideas. You still have to validate them to some degree before you build it. But it just increases speed and agility with less risk.
We actually use LaunchDarkly here at Stronghold, and we have a upcoming release, I believe, this week. And yes, it's definitely making everybody sleep better at night.
Yeah, there's so many problems with traditional software releases. Particularly, if something breaks in the middle of the night, It's not like Ghostbusters where you could just call, who are you going to call Ghostbusters? When something breaks in the middle of the night, you could, for example, have a customer support person just turn it off. Instead of the old way of having to set up a page, trying to figure out who was on call, figuring out that the person you wanted on call was not on call, and that they were actually in the Sierras in a cabin with no Wi-Fi. Which...
Yes, that's happened. That's happened to anyone, right?
Yeah.
Everyone basically who's released any type of software.
Yeah, so you could just say, okay, customer success person, something is not working, turn it off, it's 3 a.m., and then let's figure out what's happening tomorrow at a decent hour and ship something new. The other risk of doing those 3 a.m. bug fixes is, even if you can get a hold of the right people, it's 3 a.m.
That's right. You're probably not well rested, and whoever's working on it is probably a little groggy, probably more prone to make more mistakes since they're a little sleep deprived.
And then also they're under pressure. Like there's this drumbeat of something is broken, we need to fix it right now, which can cause like this fight or flight, and you can actually make more mistakes. And it's just so painful, not only for the developers, but for your end customers.
Because they don't know what's going on, and they're not having a good customer experience at the end if they're going to a product or service that is not working properly. Yeah,
there's been some really huge outages of non-LaunchDarkly customers that we feel could have been prevented if they were using LaunchDarkly.
That's amazing!
It's been really fun.
That's amazing. All right, so LaunchDarkly has a very customer-centric approach. And that's been your philosophy throughout the whole time. And you're almost kind of like dog fooding your own product within LaunchDarkly. So how do you actually figure out, or how do you take the pulse of your current customer and figure out what feature to release next in LaunchDarkly?
So it's definitely evolved over time. So when we started in 2014, it was incredibly difficult for us. So I thought it was very obvious to the world that they needed something like LaunchDarkly. My co-founder, John, our CTO, also thought it was very obvious. We thought the problem was just going to be building it. When we went out to market, we hit this massive wall of why would I feature flag at all? Because it was what we considered a pretty stable technique. I'd been at TripIt, John had been at Atlassian, and we thought this was the way software should be built. It was actually still pretty new. So there was a ton of education. Like you said before, well, this is really obvious, this is a better way to build software. It wasn't obvious to a lot of people back then. So that was the first kind of wave. The second was, okay, I get that feature flagging is good. Why should I purchase the solution from you? So there were people out there who had built their own systems.
It's a classic in an engineering org.
Yeah, and frankly, a lot of their systems were better than ours at the time. We were a 4-person startup, and so we would go to a prospect, and always our first qualifying question was, have you now or have you ever before used feature flags? Because it was just a completely separate conversation if they hadn't.
Like, this is what it is versus like, what is your process today?
Yes. And then if they did have a system, how to gently talk to them about it. Stuff that absolutely failed was coming in with this attitude of rip out your system because ours is better. Just does not work when you're selling to developers. I don't know who it would work with, but it's just...
Exactly. Like what's wrong with the system that we have today, right?
Yeah, that I built myself and I have a fair amount of pride in.
Well, it's just you have to maintain it over time. That's the issue, right?
A lot of our early days were actually, if somebody did have a system, we would ask to see it.
And did they show it to you?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, developers, I say, really much have this helpful spirit.
Yeah.
So if somebody said, we can't buy your software because our in-house is better, we'd say, can you show it to us? And we actually got a lot of really good insights about where we should be building.
Got it. So it was all like basically data driven. You would say, okay, everybody has like this core set of features, and so if you didn't have it, then you would build toward that.
Yeah, or just data driven makes it sound like we had this huge population. We're talking about like 5 or 6 friendly customers here in downtown SF.
For all intents and purposes, what I'm hearing you say is that LaunchDarkly was it was very early, right? it was very early before like this process became popularized. So, I feel like as entrepreneurs is half the battle is timing, right, for the market. And it sounds like you were early.
We were very early, and we didn't realize how early we were, just because, again, I'd been at TripIt, which was the #1 mobile travel app, and we had a platform like this in-house. John had been at Atlassian, which was, kind of a cutting-edge dev tools company, and we just thought everybody was like us. And then when we started going out and talking to people, we realized that we were pretty forward, and that wasn't always a good thing.
Being early to market is sometimes not a good thing because there's a lot of education that has to go into it, right?
Yeah. So the early days were just basically talking to friendly customers, and we would literally go to their office. I could point to many offices downtown and tell you who I visited there, and say, hey, can you show us your system? Can we talk about this? And then trying to get to a point where we were at parity and have them start using it. And then fun stuff started happening. So we got to parity where people say, okay, your system is basically as good as our homegrown, and then you don't have all the expensive maintenance, and it's more stable. And by the way, it frees up my developers to do something else.
That's right.
And then you can start to layer on it all the really fun features. Like that nobody has the time to build in-house, but really transform a business. Stuff like a scheduling feature so that you can schedule a feature to turn on at 5 a.m. instead of waking up a developer. You can do workflows where you can have a defined process of how you push a feature through from idea all the way to shipping. And you can also even start to have more automation in terms of if there's anomalies that you're getting detected from either your support system or a monitoring system, you can automatically trigger actions on a feature.
That's amazing.
Yeah. And so that's the fun stuff, but it was definitely layers and layers and layers of functionality that we had to get right first before we could do the more sophisticated features. Because if we just had the sophisticated features without the basic ones, nobody would use it at all.
That's right. We have to get to parity first with all the in-house or the more robust in-house software.
Yes.
And then you get to do the fun features. So it's just you're just in a different, now that you have 2,000 customers, it's very different from when you just started with a handful of customers. So now it's the fun stuff.
It was always fun.
Yeah.
It's just a different kind of fun.
Yeah. As entrepreneurs, as founders, as CEOs, you went from 10 customers to, now over 2,000. Tell us about scaling. We know that it's so hard to scale a startup. And so how did you scale the startup from 10 customers to over 2,000? And what did you do differently than, all of the other, developer tools out there?
Yeah, well, our first 10 customers took us a long time. So we started in 2014. The first year was basically just building and trying to get early beta customers. It took us about a year after that to get 10 paying customers. So that's 2 years all in to get to 10.
Wow.
And it was work. So I was the only salesperson back then, and I was also the only marketing person back then. So every single month after we started charging, I was I do not want a month to go by without adding a paying customer. Because I had
That's a good goal.
Yeah,
that sounds super reasonable.
Because I had a spreadsheet that I maintained with our customer list, and it was pretty short back then.
Right.
But I'm I do not want this month to go by without putting down another row. So I would make sure that they were happy. I would work with John, my co-founder, to make sure that they were installed. We were very customer driven. We got to this point around 50 customers where suddenly I became the bottleneck. Somebody would write and say, where's my order form? Where's my contract? And I'd be oh geez, I meant to do that, but I'm also CEO and there's 50 other things in my inbox. So then we started hiring our first salespeople. And I think every point of scale, at least for me, has been looking at first, where am I the bottleneck? Is there...
Yes.
Yeah. When you're around the size of a 10 to 20 person company, you as a CEO are not this grand chief executive. You're a team lead. And so, but over time, you're okay, what things am I not as good at it as somebody else, or we just need a dedicated person to do that. So that's what's really helped us scale a lot, is just being able to gracefully find people who can do it and do it much better than you and do only that.
It's almost having the self-awareness of, hello, I am the bottleneck in XYZ area, and then finding that person that's better at that function than you are and putting that person in place.
And also doing that for the rest of the org. Like in the early days, it was me and my co-founder, he did all the demos, the technical demos. He actually filled out security questionnaires with our engineer. We're okay, we need to get sales engineers who could fill out a security questionnaire. And of course, working with you to get the first couple so that they're correct, but let's get this off your plate. And same, you get big enough, you have sales ops, you have revenue ops. You don't just have the CEO maintaining a spreadsheet anymore, you actually have a functioning org.
Yeah, a functioning system that people can point to and say, okay, this is the system, let's maintain it, and then let's keep the forward momentum, sounds like.
Yeah, and then it always changes as you get bigger. Now we're at the point where we're over 100 AEs, account executives soon. And,
oh, wow. Go Edith.
Tammy, we're a growing
Go
company.
Edith.
and now we're talking about, potentially having a sales engineer who just does security questionnaires.
Oh, wow.
Nothing else but them. But when you're doing one customer a month, you absolutely do not need that. That would have been a complete waste of a resource. This one customer that we're painfully hand-holding and babysitting, we don't need a resource just to fill out that security questionnaire.
Since 2014 to, what are we at, 2022, wow. So that's 8 years. What would you have done differently as you were trying to scale the business?
I think in the early days, I really wish now that I'd hired an ops person besides me sooner. So we really struggled with fundraising in the early days. So I treasured every single dollar, and also sometimes every single nickel and penny. So until we were 8 people and had gotten our A round, we did not have finance or ops. So I actually ran payroll and calculated commissions and dealt with healthcare, which is not easy in the US. And I also, when we were getting healthcare for the company, we had to get a DBA doing businesses. And I went to City Hall and I got it.
Yes, I have done the same.
And in hindsight, I wish we just hired somebody to offload that from me.
Yes.
Because somebody needed to do it, but it wasn't really a core competence of mine. It was I was good at, talking with customers, writing content, and freeing up 5 or 10 hours of my time would have really helped.
Congratulations on your last round of funding, which was your Series D.
That's right.
And it put LaunchDarkly at a $3 billion valuation. Go Edith.
That's right.
So amazing. So tell us about, the journey between, your earlier, the earlier financings. What was different about, say, your seed Series A to, this Series D?
I mean, the seed round was brutal. Actually, the round before the seed, the pre-seed was brutal. So we'd been in a lot of startups, but we hadn't been on the fundraising side of startups. We'd been on the builder side. And when we went out to fundraise, I first asked for a lot of advice. And one advice I got was just call up your business school buddies who are associates and ask for help on your deck. I was I went to Harvey Mudd College. My co-founder went to Harvey Mudd College. If you want PhDs in solid state physics, I could call them up. I have 0 associate friends on Sand Hill Road.
So how did you hack this? How did you, if you hadn't, didn't have any business school folks in your network, then?
So the hack I did was Harvey Mudd College, where I went, is actually pretty good for founders. So I literally made a list of everybody I knew and just started asking them for advice. And I got a ton of good advice. Like Dan Shapiro, who wrote Hot Seat CEO, got coffee with me. He gave me a lot of good advice. Mike Beebe, co-founder of Matterport, gave me a ton of good advice. The thing that stuck with me from Mike Beebe was you got to pitch your startup like yacht grease.
Like yacht grease?
Yes.
I don't even know what that is. What's
and
yacht
I'll explain
grease?
it. Because what we were doing at the time was a complete mystery to VCs. They're like, feature flagging. What's that? Does it involve sailing? Or dark launching? Are you a space startup? And so yacht grease is this idea that whatever you're doing, you put it in terms that a VC understands. You know, because all VCs have their yachts. You're like, oh, you know, you could grease your yacht and it'll help it. So like the classic example he gave for Matterport, which is 3D imaging of homes, is they would pitch it to VCs as, well, this will help you visualize your third home that you don't visit often.
Wow. Okay. That's amazing.
Because otherwise VCs are like, well, why do you need this? You'd go to your same home every day. It's like, no, it's for your second or third home. So for LaunchDarkly, the advice was to pitch it as, you know, something that'll help their portfolio companies. Like your portfolio companies are struggling with software releases, this will help them. So that really helped. Getting our story together helped. It was still an uphill battle in our seed. I got a spreadsheet full of no's. Best advice is to not take it personally. Like I had this spreadsheet full of, I'm talking to this VC, here's what they said. If they say no, okay, move them to the bottom. Don't think about it again. Because otherwise you get, just move on.
You can get caught up in the no's, like, oh, okay, why can't they see it?
And a lot of times the reason why people tell you no isn't the real reason.
This is true.
For seed, I was like, okay, we just need to get enough people to say yes, which we did. But it was bruising. Yes,
it sounds like you had the grit and determination to keep moving on.
It was bruising, but I was like, I will do this. I mean, I definitely felt like quitting, but I thought about how I wanted the company to be a big success. And I knew that the job of the CEO is to raise money and then eventually to IPO and do a roadshow and then to do earning calls after that. And I thought, okay, I have to get much better at this. Like, I can't say, oh, I'm a technical co-founder and I'm not good at fundraising if I want to go public.
But it sounds like you overcame that.
I think it was a good grounding for us, though, that we never took funding for granted. Like, I've had other startup friends who have a super easy seed. You know, everybody's like, oh, let me break out my checkbook and, like, write you a big check. And then it doesn't really set the company up for success. Because they just assume that the next round after that will be easy, the next round after that will be easy, and they're not really built for failure mode.
Or if they raise that round at a higher valuation and they have like a flat, you know, past 18 months, it'll be hard for them to raise that next round.
So for us, for every round we did, I always think about the next round and then work backwards. So as soon as we did our seed, I thought, how are we gonna get our A? Like, I had a spreadsheet every runway and our success criteria I wanted us to get to. At that time, it was 500K to 1 million of ARR. And I was like, okay, how are we going to get there with the money we have? And then for the A to B, same. So that really helped just to have that mindset of, it's not like you get a round of funding and it's done.
So you actually have to achieve goals to get to the next, lily pad. I heard Reid Hoffman speak one time about, you know, it's all about getting to the next round of funding, right? And you think of it as like you're a frog kind of crossing a pond and you have to get from one lily pad to the next. You can't just jump directly to the other side of the pond. You just have to like get from one lily pad at a time. And that's kind of like how, you know, each round is, right?
It's tempting to say, well, why can't I just make like this really turbocharged leap? And, you know, raise like, so we've raised now $330 million. But I don't think you're as healthy a company. If like you get in the company we were 7 years ago, $300 million, I think it would have been a complete disaster for us.
Because you'd have to put the capital to work. And so what would you spend the money on if you didn't have like the customers or?
Money is easy. I mean, there's real estate, you can always spend the money. It's spending it wisely and building a company.
How did the fundraising process change for you from the Series Seed to the Series D?
I think what happened for LaunchDarkly is we became a category. And we became a category because we put the work in to make that category. Like, so before, when I would go pitch a VC, I would say, hey, feature management is the wave of the future. All your startups are going to be using it. Now, the investors come to me and say, hey, everybody in our portfolio is using LaunchDarkly. We get it.
Yes.
And you're making a different argument then. Now it's much more about, hey, can we see your financials and your pipeline? Does this make sense for us to invest in? Not this existential thing of, does your category exist at all?
That makes sense. That makes it much easier, right?
It makes it easier. There's still, we still get questions like, how big is the category?
It's all of software.
That's what I always say.
All of it, all of software.
Yeah. When I look at the breadth of our customers, it really is all of software. But anytime you're a new category, you always have to convince people of that. It's not like a database where Forrester or IDG publishes a report about how big it is.
But it is everybody who has a database.
Yeah,
Yes.
if you're shipping software, you need LaunchDarkly.
Yeah, that's a huge category.
And it's fun because our customers really feel like it's changed their life for the better.
It has. It makes everybody sleep better at night, and you can find those bugs, or you can just launch features darkly.
Yeah.
And see if it resonates with your customer.
Like when I go see our customers, they say, this changed our engineering culture. It changed how we interact with product. And it changed our employees' lives for the better because they're just not so harried anymore.
Yeah, I could see how it changes engineering culture because it just increases velocity. Yes. And that's what you want to see in the engineering org. It's just increased velocity, increased releases, and so forth.
Decrease stress.
Yes. So now that you've hit the unicorn status, this is like where every founder, CEO wants to get to. Now that you're here, what does this success bring, and then what kind of pressure does it put on you now?
Being a unicorn was never the goal. Like, being a successful company was our goal. Like, it's not like you get the Forbes article and you shut the company. You get the funding and then you have capital to deploy to, hire more engineers, hire more marketing, hire more field salespeople, and continue to grow. So the valuation was simply a recognition of the progress we'd made since prior rounds. I will say that it was good in ways I didn't realize for recruiting. I as CEO and co-founder have every bit of confidence that the company is going to be amazing. A lot of people you're trying to recruit need more validation than just the CEO saying that.
This is fair. Absolutely. So it's the signaling for recruiting.
It was very good for recruiting that we were a stable company. We did have that capital to deploy. We were looked upon as a up-and-coming company, particularly in Europe. It really helped with recruiting in Europe as we went from kind of this unknown Oakland company to something that recruiting could say, hey, look, they're valued at $3 billion. They're not going to go under in the next 2 weeks. This is a company that you can build your career at. It was also good for our customers. Anytime a customer takes a risk on an early stage startup, it's a little nerve-wracking for them.
That's right, because the software that they've used to put in their process could go out of business.
Yes, so it was good to signal that, look, we're here.
We're here to stay.
We're here to stay. We have capital. We're absolutely somebody that you can trust.
Right. And then the pressures that kind of came along. Now that you're here, is there any other unforeseen pressure that you have to perform differently, or is it you're just staying on course?
I think the pressure when you're early stage is very different. The pressure in the early stages was much more existential. When we had 0 customers, the pressure was really how we're going to get that first customer. when we got that first customer, we were at this point where we're getting one customer a month. It was excruciating. When we were, just trying to build ourselves as a company that people could trust, every day was just hard. Now we have the capital of the team where there's not the same single points of failure anymore. Right. It's more of a built system, which we're still growing. We're roughly 400 people now, but it's much, much more of a system that works together rather than a handful of people trying to multitask and do everything.
A lot of people wearing different hats to actually having full-blown functions. And you went from founder to executive, right? The transition from founder to executive now, chief executive, right? Is a different, your role is always evolving.
Yeah, I mean, if you're at a rapidly growing company, your role changes every 3 to 6 months.
Thank you for making all of the underrepresented founders proud. You are literally one of the few female founders who have kind of gotten to this stage, within your company, within fundraising. And do you have any advice for any female founders or unrepresented founders about what might you need to be aware of or do differently, as they're building their company?
I think building a company is hard, no matter how or who you are. It's easy to look at somebody 8 years in. We started in 2014 and see, oh wow, they're worth $3 billion.
Overnight success.
No, there's 8 years of just grinding work. Many no's. That's just the way it is. I don't think there are shortcuts. I think some of those no's actually made the company a better place. So just, if you truly believe in what you're doing, just keep going. You might get to a place where you're like, okay, there is no market here, which I advise a lot of startups now informally. If it's 4 years in and you have 0 customers, maybe it is time to fold it up. But if you can see kind of like those little lights, keep moving. I remember in the early days, our customers were literally anybody I could find who was a friend who would use it. And when we first got our sign up of somebody who I never met in person, I was just ecstatic, because it meant that our funnels for content marketing were starting to work.
It was a big milestone.
It was a huge milestone. So just always take those moments of joy, because there's a lot of moments of non-joy.
Yeah. So celebrate your wins.
Yes.
And have the grit and determination just to keep moving forward.
Also, the stuff that mattered a lot when you're smaller just kind of fades. Like the VCs that told us no. One of my sayings is, so there's this thing in sales where you close deals and you close them lost. So you either close them won, which means you got them, or you close them lost, which means I'm not going to work on this deal anymore. What happened to us in our early days was they were basically all closed lost. I would just, people weren't ready for it. What happened over time is a lot of those people who said, not now, I'm not ready, are now customers.
That's amazing. So does that say something about you should always nurture your lost? Or nurture those customers?
I think there's an art to selling. You don't want to be that annoying person who emails somebody 7 times a day. If a customer or prospect isn't ready at the time, you can graciously say, you know what? It's not the right time. We're here when you're ready. And they'll come to you. I mean, that happened over and over and over with us. If we'd had a customer and they needed to get their continuous integration into place. They had this other big project they needed to do first. And we're like, great, when you're done, we're here. And then they would come back. So my saying is never close lost, always close not now.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
I do love that.
Yeah, or even the same with people we would try to recruit. So startups are different at every size.
That's right.
Like, when you're an 8-person startup, the kind of people that want to work there are very different than when you're at a 400-person startup. So like when I was interviewing salespeople, sometimes there would be somebody really good, but I'm like, you know what, you want a bigger company than us.
And that's also not now.
Yeah.
With recruiting.
Yeah.
Right.
And I would be polite about it. And then like 2 or 3 years later, they would come back and join the company. So you just have to have this mindset of, it's not that I can't do that or that that customer doesn't want this. It's just, is this the right time for that?
Right.
Or that this person who's an amazing salesperson but really needs a built-out playbook, an SDR, and an SE to be successful. We don't have that right now.
Right.
We didn't have that back then, but we have it now. And maybe it's the perfect time for them.
So timing is everything. It's not a no, it's a not right now.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a gem. I love that.
I have seen startup founders take it extremely personally when a customer says no. And that's just really destructive.
I could see that. And sometimes it is personal because you're calling your startup is almost like your baby. So it's just like calling your baby ugly. So sometimes people take offense to that, but you're just saying you need to really separate, that out, emotionally separate that out and don't take it personally because it really is about timing sometimes.
Yeah, like our earliest users were my friends. And some of them said, you know what, this is not a fit for us. And I said, would you even pay like $5 a month so I could put you on the books? And they said, no, it is not worth $5 to us. And you know what? I really appreciated that feedback. And I said, thank you for, giving us a trial.
If you had that pessimism going forward, I don't think you could carry on. Like you actually have to, realize that, be happy, and then move on. Yeah. Oh. I love that.
I think it's just like thinking, if you have a mountain, how do you move it?
Right. Little by little.
Little by little.
Yeah. Little by little. Tell us about what excites you most today. What gets you out of the bed every morning?
I love that LaunchDarkly is changing for the better the way people build software. Our customers say that it's changed the way they work with each other. And then it also makes their customers' lives better. Like they can innovate more with less risk so they can get better features to their own customers. That makes me so excited. I also really like that because we've been around since 2014 that our employees, have been able to develop their careers. Like one of our core values is learn and grow. So I've seen people come in from an entry-level SDR, sales development rep, to go on to be one of our top salesperson, doing well over $1 million in bookings a year. And that's super fun, to watch people's career development over time, or people who've joined the company and then decided to go start their own company, which
because
I love.
They were probably inspired by you.
Yeah, it's just fun to see people grow. And it's fun to see our customers grow, because like there's customers now that I've been working with for over 5 years. That's always my promise when I go see a prospect is, I will talk to you in a year and 2 years and 3 years and see how you're doing. And I promise that you will be happier.
And they are.
And they
Sounds like it. Yeah, you're really making a big impact about how software is released. And apparently software is eating the world.
One bite at a time.
So Edith, tell us about the future of LaunchDarkly. If you were to, fast forward, say 4 years from now, where is LaunchDarkly?
LaunchDarkly has had amazing success so far. We went from my co-founder and I, which is to idea, to over 2,000 customers worldwide. And, hundreds of employees also worldwide in Europe and in Australia. And I think we're just going to continue to change the way software is built for the better. Right now we're the leading feature management platform. I think we could easily have 30,000 customers, as well as continue to have a team worldwide to help support those customers. I'm also really excited about the team continuing to grow. We've seen people make their careers at LaunchDarkly. We had somebody who started as our first solution engineer, and then moved up to be a senior director. So I love also seeing the growth of our employees, not just in numbers, but in their own personal growth. And I also love seeing that growth of our customers who go from being very, just getting used to this new style of development to really just fundamentally changing everything about how they build for the better and improving their own lives.
Feels like you're just getting started, and then you have a long way to go, because you'll basically be touching you could potentially touch every piece of software that is released.
Yeah.
And that's a lot.
Yeah, we have support for 20 plus languages right now. And there's also software that people don't even realize is using LaunchDarkly. For example, a lot of media streaming services use LaunchDarkly. We have IoT, Internet of Things customers. We're using it to control devices. We're in banking software. We're also in automotive software. So software isn't just, the companies that you might see in, TechCrunch in terms of e-commerce, but software is really everywhere.
It's in infrastructure, it's in internet, it's in, now we have Twilio and all of the just voice over IP and all of the devices that you're wearing or in your home. It really is everywhere.
I don't see that slowing down.
And then since there's more and more adoption with software, it's like your total addressable market also just keeps growing.
Yeah, I think we're just at the very beginning of where software could be.
Globally. That's amazing. That's quite, you have a lot of work ahead of you, Edith. Anybody that I can believe in that can do it, it's definitely you.
Well, thanks, Tammy. It's really nice to catch up with you.
Yeah, it was so nice to have you here at the Stronghold offices. And where can people find you, like your social channels? Where can they learn more about LaunchDarkly?
Yeah, well, of course, www.launchdarkly.com, our Twitter handle. We're also on LinkedIn. We have a meetup also. And we also have our annual conference where if you're interested in LaunchDarkly and feature management, you can hear a lot more content, not just from me, but from our customers about how they're using the product.
All right. Well, thank you so much for coming here. And again, it's such an honor to have you here at the Stronghold offices.